The 7 curtains of the tabernacle are like 7 subtle human bodies. We begin a very important and practical topic of our present spiritual structure. This topic is extremely practical, and when we go through it, you will discover new, amazing possibilities. How the Holy Scriptures reveal our true nature to us. Today, many people turn to Eastern practices to understand what a person is, what's in a person. But all this has long been revealed in the Holy Scriptures through Old Testament images. But in the words of the Apostle Paul, human minds are blinded, for until this day the same veil remains unlifted in the reading of the Old Testament, because the veil is taken away in Christ. The second epistle of the Holy Apostle Paul to the Corinthians, the 3rd chapter of the 14th verse. When Jesus Christ came to earth, he revealed to people their true nature as sons and daughters of God. Jesus Christ showed that the Old Testament image of the tabernacle or temple is a prototype of man himself. Do you not know that you are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? First Epistle to the Corinthians, 3rd chapter, 16th verse. This is how the Apostle Paul summarizes this revelation. Many chapters of Holy Scripture are devoted to the construction of the Old Testament tabernacle, which, as it turned out, was a model of man. People usually skip these chapters, not wanting to read about the beams, nails, and curtains that made up the tabernacle. Who would be interested in reading about the 7 veils that covered the tabernacle? Who cares what they were made of? What's the use of that? I'm interested. I'm worried. It opens up a practical understanding for me. What kind of person am I? How am I organized? Without God's revelation, we don't even know how we really work. Anatomy and physiology are far from being able to discover everything, so the thesis for today's and subsequent videos of this series is as follows. The structure of the biblical tabernacle vividly and figuratively conveys to us the spiritual, practical structure of man. The 7 veils that covered the tabernacle, which are described in detail in the Holy Scriptures, reflect the 7 so-called subtle bodies of man, which are also mentioned in Eastern teachings: the physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and energetic bodies. The 7 curtains of the Old Testament tabernacle, thrown one on top of the other, made of different materials and painted in different colors, reflect, as the New Testament writes, the tabernacle of our body, which also consists of 7 subtle bodies of man. And if Eastern philosophy also sees and notices this, then there are some fundamentally important and practical things that only the Creator reveals about man. Long ago, God's anointed King David compared himself to the woven veils he was made of. For you formed my inward parts, you covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God! How great is the sum of them! Psalm 139, verses from the 13th to the 17th. Truly we are wonderfully arranged, and God gave his people, even while wandering in the wilderness, a vivid visual model of man through the construction of the tabernacle. Wikipedia reference. Tabernacle that translated from the ancient Greek tent, or the ancient Hebrew dwelling place, abode. For example, the phrase tent of witness in ancient Hebrew is mainly used in the meaning of the Jewish marching temple, the tabernacle of the congregation, which, according to the Bible, was used as a place of sacrifice and storage of the Ark of the Covenant before the construction of the Jerusalem temple, created strictly in the image of the tabernacle. The tabernacle, which in Russian tradition is also used as a synonym for tabernacle, was the dwelling place of God. God was revealed to people in and through the tabernacle. Man, created in the image and likeness of God, is also revealed through the tabernacle. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. Exodus chapter 25, verse 8. The tabernacle thus reveals the oneness of God with men. As Sonsino noted, it should be noted that the Torah says not to, I will dwell in the tabernacle, but I will dwell among them, that is, among people. This means that the glory of God is manifested not so much through the temple itself as through the people who built it. It is not the temple that is the reason for the revelation of God's glory, but the selfless desire of people to feel the hand of the Almighty who governs the world everywhere. And yet, as Malbim writes, it is said, and let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. Exodus chapter 25, verse 8. In them, people, and not in him, in the sanctuary. We must all build a tabernacle in our hearts so that God may dwell there. Thus the Jewish prophets and teachers of the law repeatedly emphasize the fact that the temple is needed not by God, but by the people themselves, and that the structure of the tabernacle reveals not so much the structure of God, but rather the deeds of God and the structure of man himself. The tabernacle is an amazing, exciting revelation from the Lord. But today we will focus on the equally amazing and most practical revelation of the tabernacle, namely about man. Let me remind you that God himself gave the people the command to build the tabernacle, as well as all the descriptions and oral drawings, after the people left Egypt in the desert. This tent was a frame made of wooden planks overlaid with gold, and he was covered with 7 veils, Exodus the 26th chapter. The design of the tabernacle made it possible to disassemble the entire structure into wearable parts. The structure of subtle bodies is represented in different ways in different systems and esoteric traditions. Their number varies from 3 to several dozen. However, these concepts do not contradict each other in principle, since the human structure is based on 3 bodies: the physical body, the subtle, and the causal. All other bodies are different aspects and manifestations of these basic bodies. Nevertheless, it is the biblical illustration of the tabernacle with its 7 veils that is the most accurate, most practical representation of human nature from the Creator. Tent covers. Coverings were thrown over the walls and top of the tabernacle, representing its most important part and giving it the appearance of a tent. There were 7 of them. We will talk about them and at the same time point out their correspondence to one of the 7 bodies of man. First, the physical body. The physical body of man was represented by the outer covering of the tabernacle made of tanned animal skin. This layer covered the tabernacle from above, from the outside, and was the only visible covering. Everyone else was hiding under it. To an outside observer, it might seem that this outer covering of skin, like that of an animal or a human, is the tabernacle. It was the kind of cover that met rain, snow, wind, and sun. There is no need to explain for a long time that this outer layer, or skin, represents our physical body, visible in the skin. This body interacts with the elements of nature. This body hides other veils of human nature. The physical body is a visible and tangible part of a person. These are our flesh and bones, organs, and muscles. The physical body is responsible for our physical activity and health. Second, the etheric body. The second cover was immediately under the outer cover and was made of red mutton skins. This veil symbolizes our etheric body, that is, our electromagnetic radiation or field, in other words, the veil surrounding our body, which is recorded with the help of equipment. This is our glow, reflecting our life, the degree of its intensity and brightness. This layer was colored red as the color of life or blood, the color of animal energy, the color of the power of life, its radiance and beauty. This layer was painted with the most expensive dyes and at the same time hidden from view. In the same way, our etheric body is beautiful but hidden from prying eyes. Third, the emotional body, the emotional or astral body. The next cover, which was under an ethereal red blanket of thin skins, was made of goat's hair, a common material for tents. It was a thinner, more vulnerable cover, which had to be reliably protected from all sides. This blanket provided a comfortable temperature level in the tabernacle, which varied depending on the weather conditions, but was somehow balanced by the woolen blanket. This veil represents our emotional body, which reacts to the processes and changes taking place around us. Emotions are our shock absorber for changing external conditions and temperatures from hot to cold. The comfort of staying in the tabernacle or in the body of a particular person depends on the emotional stability of the person himself. Fourth, the mental body. The lower layer, which served as the ceiling of the tent, was a blanket of twisted linen, blue, purple, and scarlet wool. On the stripes that made up the veil, each of which was 28 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, cherubim were elaborately woven. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine woven linen and blue, purple, and scarlet thread. With artistic designs of cherubim, you shall weave them. Exodus chapter 26, first verse. This covering of the tabernacle, the so-called lower or inner one, was similar in its material to the multicolored curtain separating the sanctuary from the Holy of Holies, as we read about it in verse 31. It was made by the work of Chosheb, which, according to ancient legend, represented the peculiarity that it gave the fabric two different looks from the face and from the inside. On one side, images of cherubs were embroidered on a tricolor field. It is a reflection of our mental body, our thoughts and words reflecting our God. Likeness. The mental body is connected to our mind and thinking. It is responsible for our thoughts, beliefs, and the ability to analyze information. The mental body allows us to use our mind in everyday life and make decisions. Here the human nature, represented by the previous veils, meets with the divine nature that filled the tabernacle, which is represented by the cherubim. Fifth, the causal body. You shall make a screen for the door of the tabernacle, woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen, made by a weaver. Exodus chapter 26, verse 36. Another veil, extremely important, was the entrance to the sanctuary. Only through this veil could a person from the courtyard of the sanctuary get inside, into the tabernacle itself. In the holy place where the priest walked, he served, and from where the incense were performed to God, incense was smoked 24 hours a day. The causal body is what is commonly referred to as a person's soul. It contains, as it were, the totality of all information, all thoughts, all actions, character, beliefs, and faith of a person. In the tabernacle, this body is marked by the main entrance to the tabernacle, through which a person entered the human space of the tabernacle, the holy place. Sixth, the spiritual body, spirit. Inside, the tent was divided into two unequal parts by another curtain of paroquet, which consisted of the same two-layer woven fabric, yarn and fine linen in blue, purple, and scarlet colors, as the lower cover. The paroquet was fastened with gold hooks on 4 pillars of acacia covered with gold leaf and mounted on silver bases. You shall make a veil woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread and fine woven linen. It shall be woven with an artistic design of cherubim. You shall hang it upon the 4 pillars of acacia wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be gold upon 4 sockets of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the clasps. Then you shall bring the ark of the testimony in there behind the veil. The veil shall be a divider for you between the holy place and the most holy. Exodus chapter 26, verses 31 through 33. This veil separated the holy place, where the sanctified person or soul was present, from the Holy of Holies, where God was present, the presence of a hidden but real Shekinah, or the glory of God, the fire of God. It symbolized the spiritual body of man, God's spark in it, God's fire, God's presence. The spiritual body is the Holy of Holies. Despite the fact that the spiritual body cannot be seen or felt, it is the main component of the personality. That's why all the other veils exist. On one side, the veil entered the Holy of Holies, the presence and nature of God, and on the other side it looked into the holy place, where the human priest became like God in his ministry. The spiritual body is the deepest and highest of all bodies. It is connected with our soul on the one hand, the holy separation, and the divine, the Holy of Holies. 7th, the energy body. The last 7th curtain was a curtain that surrounded the entire tabernacle and the entire courtyard. Roughly speaking, it was the fence of the tabernacle, the outer fence, also made of a special durable covering. You shall also make the court of the tabernacle. For the south side there shall be hangings for the court made of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long for one side. Exodus chapter 27, verse 9. An energy body is a shell that includes all other bodies. It represents our energy essence and is the link between all other bodies. The energy body is responsible for our overall energy potential and ability to recover. Here on this level, behind the veil of the courtyard, the mystery of the union of God with man takes place, which is expressed both by the structure of the tabernacle and by the action that took place in it. But we will talk about the action and interaction of these 7 levels representing a person separately. The first conclusions, the information about our 7 bodies, is presented to your attention in the perspective of God, in the perspective of the Holy Scriptures. The Old Testament tabernacle not only provides the most accurate description of human nature and makes it clear and memorable, but also reveals to us the amazing mechanism of interaction of these 7 bodies. But we'll talk about this separately in the following videos. This information is not for a one-time or cursory listening. This video is your mirror in which you still have a lot to look at here and in heaven. Come back to this video, learn from the Scriptures, and we will soon look at the most practical picture of the interaction of these veils in the history of mankind. This knowledge will simply turn your life around and shelter you as if under the shadow of God's wings, unspeakably strengthen and bless you. In the meantime, fix this material in yourself.